The legend is in the building, that's right. So it's about a month out.
Are we gonna tell everybody you're my cousin, Alex?
We should. All right, let's get that out the way.
Alex is my first cousin. My mother and his mother are sisters.
That's right.
And I'm very proud of him and everything he's doing. He's like 6 inches taller than me, but he's my little cousin. And I'm really proud of him and happy to be part of this.
Yeah. Well, I got the height, you got the fame and the money. So, I guess maybe that's a fair trade. I don't know. But I mean, how are you feeling? I mean, a month out since securing the ego. I mean, you out here like Thanos right now, getting those.
I feel good. I mean, that first week or two, I was really just floating. It was a really beautiful thing to see so many people congratulating me and just reminiscing about all the amazing experiences that led to the EGOT, because all of those awards came from collaborating with really incredible artists, from producers, co-writers, instrumentalists, to Broadway actors, to film directors like Ava DuVernay, just an incredible group of people that I've been able to collaborate with over my career. And those awards wouldn't have happened if I wasn't able to work with them. And so I'm just grateful. I feel like I've been really blessed, and I just want to keep going now. Keep making more music, keep creating art that moves people and moves the conversation.
Well, thank you for being such an inspiration. Thank you. But let's go back. I mean, you didn't start yesterday. It's been a long journey. Can you tell us a little? First of all, do all of you know his name is actually John Roger Stevens, not John Legend. So let's talk about, that time, the very early stages of your life. Can you explain that?
I grew up in Springfield, Ohio. Ohio State won today. It was closer than it should have been.
Oh, H, baby.
But anyway, I'm from Ohio. We all grew up in the same area. My whole family's there. I grew up in the family of a bunch of preachers and musicians, and we grew up in the Pentecostal church. And a lot of my musical upbringing was in the church. So my mother was a choir director. My grandmother was the church organist. Our grandfather was the pastor. And then when he retired, my uncle took over as the pastor. So I just grew up in church. I grew up in choir rehearsal. I grew up in the choir. I grew up playing for the church, and so I wouldn't exist as a musician without the church, and that was the background that gave me the opportunity to play in front of people every week, to develop my craft as a writer, as a performer, as a singer, and yeah, that was the beginning for me. We grew up in a small town. My father was a factory worker. My mother stayed at home with us. She homeschooled us several years as well.
Yep.
So they cared a lot about our education, they cared a lot about music, and they cared a lot about church. And that was pretty much everything that was going on in our lives at that time.
Absolutely. And you even in a band, the Stevens Five.
We had the Stevens Five. We was like a bootleg Jackson 5. We sang gospel only. I wasn't Michael. I was more like Tito or Jermaine.
Who was it, Kashawn?
Kashawn was Michael. That was my older cousin, Kashawn. He could really sing too. If you ever listen to my first album, Get Lifted, yeah. My family sings on that song with me. It's called "It Don't Have to Change," and you'll hear some of the members of the Stevens Five on that song.
That's right. So I mean, you explained a lot about what you grew up in, right? And I think that sort of sets what looked like a model situation for you.
Well, it's the situation that a lot of black musicians come up in. A lot of us came from the church. That was often the only place a young person could perform in our communities. And so that's why from R. Kelly to Marvin Gaye to Aretha Franklin to Patti LaBelle to like every artist that you can think of that influenced R&B, like almost all of them came through the church.
Through the church. It's real. It's real. It's real.
I don't even know why I said R. Kelly's name first.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna elaborate on top of that. I was gonna. It's a couple names that we're not gonna mention. There's a couple names we're not gonna mention. Right?
Pray for me, y'all.
Yeah. But no, I mean, our grandmother, our late grandmother.
Yes.
She was a huge influence on your life. I unfortunately didn't get to know her in the physical, but in the spiritual, I'm thankful for people like you because I get to know her.
Yeah.
Can you talk about her impact on your life?
Yeah, well, my grandmother's name was Elmira Lloyd. Like I said before, she was the organist at our church. And when she started getting sick, she wanted to pass on her knowledge to me. She started teaching me how to play gospel piano and showing me the songs that she was playing at church. And really, I spent as much time with her as anybody else in my family.
Yeah.
I would go over there every Sunday after church. I would spend so much time with her. And she passed away at a pretty young age. She was 58 years old. She had heart problems. And when I'm performing now, I'm always thinking of her. When I'm playing the piano, you're hearing her style through me. And so she was a huge influence in my life.
Yeah. And in her loss, it actually devastated the family in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it put my mother through a lot. She was depressed for a while.
Yeah.
She was addicted to drugs for a while after that. It was a really tough time for our entire family. My family split up. My dad got custody of us. I think people look at me and think I have this perfect life, but I came from a background, it was a challenge for us, especially as teenagers, just figuring things out. We were in a single parent home, dealing with our mother having a really serious drug problem and us not knowing if she was even going to survive. And somehow we made it through all that.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think that's why I get so involved in stuff like criminal justice reform, because I know what it's like to be in a family where you're dealing with those kinds of issues, and you want your family to get help. You don't want them to get locked up. You want them to be, to get the help they need so they can help their family, they can be there for their family. And I see so many times where people's families just get divided and destroyed by the criminal justice system.
Yep.
That's why I get so involved in that issue.
Free America
Yeah.
being one. So, I mean, when you think about all that you had to overcome, you graduated high school at 16.
Yeah.
Then started working Ivy League, graduated Ivy League, Penn, UPenn. Then started working at BCG.
Yeah.
You know, we always knew in some form or fashion you were going to be successful, but you know, you could have easily sort of taken that linear pathway and very much have been a successful CEO if you wanted to be, right? But when did you know, when was that moment where you were like, nah, I gotta go for it. Music is my thing, I gotta do it.
Well, I loved music from the beginning. When I was 15, I wrote an essay. It was the Black History Makers of Tomorrow competition that McDonald's used to put on. It was like a essay writing competition, and each local area would have their own winner, and then they would advance to the nationals. Well, I won the Dayton area McDonald's Black History Makers of Tomorrow essay competition. And in my essay, I basically said what I wanted to do in life. I said, I'm gonna make Black history by, first of all, becoming a successful musician, and then secondly, using my success to help my community and fight for justice and for equality. And I knew that when I was 15, and I've been trying to live that ever since. And so the path that I took to get there was kind of circuitous, because even though I was singing all the time, I was writing all the time, I did go to Penn, I majored in English, and I graduated from school and worked as a management consultant for 3 years. BCG, Boston Consulting Group, and it's the opposite of having a music career. It's like PowerPoint slides and Excel spreadsheets and, a very different life. And I did fine at it. I met some great people, and it was an enjoyable experience for me, but I knew what I wanted to do. So the first year after I graduated, I was in Boston for 1 year. That was back in 1999. And in 2000, I moved to New York. And I knew that if I moved to New York, I could make it in the music business. If I could have the access to the industry and other creative people that were here, I could collaborate with interesting people. I could meet the types of tastemakers that could advance my career. And I just started to do that. I was already playing live music a lot. I had been writing my demos since I was in college. And I started meeting people. One of my roommates was Kanye's cousin. His name is Devon Harris. Yep. And he's a creative himself and also an entrepreneur. And his idea was, you got to meet my cousin. He's about to move here from Chicago, and y'all should work together. And so he introduced us back in 2001. I was playing at Jimmy's Uptown in Harlem. Y'all remember that? Yes. So I used to play there a lot. Almost every month I would play there. And one of my shows, I think my first show there, Kanye came on the invitation of his cousin. And he introduced me to him, and we started working together. So at the time, Kanye had just started making beats for the Blueprint, so H to the Izzo, all that came out September 11th of 2001. And his beats were on it, and he was starting to get a lot of buzz in the industry. Like, you know, he had Jay's first single, that was a big deal. He was working with the rest of Rockefeller, Beanie, everybody. So things were happening for him, but he wasn't a famous person at the time. He was just somebody that the industry was talking about. And we started working together. And he had this dream that he wanted to be a rapper. Like, everybody thought of him as a beat maker. They wanted beats from him. But he's like, yo, I'm a solo artist. Y'all got to hear my solo music. And so I started doing hooks for his songs. Yep. He started giving me beats for my demo. And eventually I signed with Good Music. And that was probably 2002, 2003. We were writing songs like Used to Love You and Let's Get Lifted and All Right. And all the songs you heard on Get Lifted, they were written between 2001 and 2004. The last one actually was Ordinary People. That was the most recent song that made the album. But during that time, I was working with Kanye, I was working with Devon, I was working with a guy named Dave Tozer, who's produced with me a lot through the years. And that was basically my main creative team, along with will.i.am, because we had the same manager. And we actually wrote Ordinary People together and She Don't Have to Know from Get Lifted. So that was basically my creative team. We wrote together, did everything together. I performed with Kanye on tour while he was promoting College Dropout. And he was opening for Usher in the Confessions tour in like August of 2004. And I was like his sidekick on the piano, singing and playing the piano. And finally, Get Lifted came out in December of 2004, and the rest is history.
So it's one thing I want to know, or I want them to know. Can you tell them the story of how you got the name John Legend?
Yeah, so a guy named Jay Ivey, he's a poet from Chicago, spoken word artist, actor, and all-around good person. I met him through Kanye. We were all in the studio together, and he just started calling me the Legend. He thought I sounded like the singers we grew up listening to, and always had kind of an old soul and an old school quality. So he just started calling me the Legend. And then eventually, somebody in the group started calling me John Legend. And eventually, around our crew, like, everybody was calling me John Legend. And I was already performing live. I was already, among a small circle of people known as John Stevens, and that's who I was. But I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go with this nickname and make it my stage name. And I knew it was kind of ballsy to call yourself a legend without a record deal. Yeah. But I believed that I was gonna speak that into existence and I was gonna make it happen. And I wasn't going to not call myself that because I was afraid of failure. I was gonna call myself that because I believed that I was gonna be able to make it happen, and that I would spend my career trying to make it happen.
We talked a little bit about, the Holy Ghost filled background we come from, sons of preachers, grew up under the pew. When you first decided to go out there and perform, the family was kind of like, whoa, Johnny's singing love music?
Singing that devil's music.
So, I guess I want to know, what was that impact on you creatively and, choosing to go secular, and how do you feel about that?
I always felt like I was going to sing secular music, even when I was younger. I never told my parents that, but I always felt like that was going to happen at some point. But I always take the church with me. It's with me in everything that I do. Yeah. And the music of the church is with me everywhere I go. And the principles that I learned in church are with me everywhere I go. So I don't feel like I left it in that sense. I feel like I still make music that is spiritual. It's just, it ain't about Jesus, but it's about us loving each other,
Yeah. I'm going to share just a quick story. I don't know if you remember, about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was living in Chicago at the time. I happened to run into Chance in the Target. I don't know what the Chance is, but you know, I remember walking up to him and I was just automatically thinking like, yo, have you ever worked with John? And I could just see his eyes just flicker. And it was this level of excitement. He had never, you know, you guys knew about each other, but never met yet. And that moment was like, I realized sort of your influence on hip hop. And I think you almost single-handedly really brought soul back to the culture.
Well, I think I won't say I was single-handedly doing that.
I'm gonna say,
but I do believe that our group of artists and collaborators, we made an explicit effort to make hip hop more soulful. I think there were other artists doing that as well, like The Roots and High Tech and so many other great producers that were also doing that. No ID. So many other great producers were doing that as well. But I think our collective had a lot to do with that, and we're proud of it, you know. I think we made some really special music, especially during that time when we were all together and like really like hungry. It was a beautiful time, and I know that artists like Chance were watching us, and they were young at that time. We're like, you know, they were looking up to us, wanting to be where we were, and then it's exciting to see people like Chance, people that were influenced by the work that we did, achieve the kind of success that they have achieved.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of artists you have worked with in hip hop, I mean, the list is like, you can go back all the way back to the end of that wall. In terms of your faves, who would be you don't have to name Kanye, we know where he lives, but who would be your faves of working with?
I mean, I'm a big Jay-Z fan. I've loved him just as a fan and just loved his music over the years, but I've been really blessed to be on some of his records. I think, honestly, some of the best collabs I've done are with Rick Ross.
If I could grunt, I would do it.
It's like simpatico, you know, like something about his voice and my voice and the beats that he chooses. I think it just works really well together. And so I think a lot of my best collabs with hip-hop artists have been with Rose.
Yeah, you've blessed so many hooks. A lot of rappers I didn't listen to until I heard you on the hook, I'm gonna be honest. Can we talk a little bit about, because sometimes as a creative, you think some of these things come random, but what I learned about you is your songwriting process is quite methodical.
Yeah.
Can you just maybe share a little bit about your process and how you go through it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a randomness and an inspiration to it, but there's also a method to it as well, and there's a practice that you need to get into, I think, if you want to be a prolific creator. And so, personally, I like to schedule time to write. So I will schedule time in the studio, I'm going in, and I'm going to write. I usually have another writer with me, so that we'll bounce ideas off of each other, and I feel like it's a successful day if I come away with at least one song. Now, that song may not be the one, it might not be even on the album, but I want to walk away that day saying I created something brand new. And it's a beautiful feeling to like, I wrote this verse, I wrote this chorus, everything came together. It feels really good, and I feel like I can go home now. And so that's the way I kind of schedule it. And I think you do have to schedule your creativity. I know that sounds kind of like boring, but it really is part of the process. Like, even if you're just going to the coffee shop and you know that at the coffee shop, you're gonna spend time writing no matter what you're doing, whether it's writing essays or writing songs, whatever it is, if you schedule that time or you say this is work time and not just kind of wait around for an idea to hit you, but you actually try to channel those ideas and summon them in a moment, in a space where you like to create, I think that is a great way to stay productive and prolific. And everything you write is not going to be amazing. But that shouldn't stop you from the practice of writing and continuing to create, because if you continue, you're going to stumble on something great. And just keep going, keep trying to summon that muse and make it happen. The actual process of writing, I usually will have like a musical idea or maybe one line of the song or one little hook that comes to me. My song Again. The first thing that came to me is, and I'm doing it again. Yes, I'm doing it again. Oh, I'm doing it again. And so once I had that,
That boy good. That boy good.
Once I had that, I started building around it. I started building chords around that musical idea. I start deciding where the rest of the melody goes. And then I usually have the whole melody and the whole chord structure laid out before I ever finish the lyric. So I'm just mumbling things on the verse. And it just sounds like nonsense, of course. But it lays out the format of what the song's gonna be. And then I let that music and that melody and that bounce kind of dictate what the lyric is gonna be. Of course, it's gotta tell a story, but it needs to fit within that bounce, fit within that format, fit within that structure. And then eventually, once you feel like you really nailed it, your song is done. Yeah.
So, cuffing season is almost among us.
Cuffing season.
Yeah. But it's one person I haven't talked about yet that I'm sure you guys are a fan of. You can tell me who it is. You two just celebrated your 5th-year wedding anniversary.
Yes.
That wedding was...
Yeah.
I'm glad I was single at that time because to my future wife, I don't want to create no expectations because that wedding was unreal.
It was nice.
But,
we had a good time.
But you guys have become the Pinterest board for relationship goals, # relationship goals. But what are the challenges that come with that?
Well, the challenges we have are the same challenges that a lot of people have. I think you're raising 2 kids, that's a challenge. Just dividing up your time between work, kids, and your actual couplehood, like your relationship. You have to maintain all those things, and you can't neglect your relationship with your spouse or your partner just because you have kids. You have to do all of it. And so I think those kinds of challenges, I think, they're not unique to us because we're famous. In some ways, we are just ordinary people, as I say. We have all the resources we need, so we're very fortunate in that sense. And our kids never have to want for anything, but it's still a challenge. It's still a challenge to be the best parents. It's still a challenge to not feel guilty when you have to leave. It's still a challenge to try to figure out what exactly is the best way to raise your kids with boundaries, but also, you want to make them happy and give them what they want. It's all these things I think every parent goes through. We go through it too. Obviously, we're doing it in the spotlight, and we're doing it with a lot of people watching. But honestly, I don't get that shaken by the spotlight. I'm like, we're being ourselves. We're not putting on any kind of front. The spotlight doesn't really bother me one way or the other.
Yeah. To that point, you talked about in the past, you felt like fame reached you at a right point in your life.
Yeah. I think I was already formed as a man. I knew who I was. I had worked. I had gone to school. I had paid my own bills. I actually knew how to balance my own checkbook. And I feel like when kids get famous at like 16 and they haven't been through that, it's harder. It's harder for them mentally to handle it. And I think having matured a bit before it happened for me, even though I wanted it to happen when I was watching Star Search when I was 8 years old, or Apollo when I was young, I was watching these shows thinking I should have been there and I should have been famous already and discovered already. But it actually worked out at the right time, I think, for me, because having the experiences I had before fame, it made it easier for me to deal with it.
Yeah. Now, 2018 has been a crazy year for you. Not only did you secure the EGOT, you had a brand new baby boy.
Yes, Miles.
Miles. So with what you just mentioned, what is that like, knowing you're now raising celebrity children?
I haven't really processed what it means all the way because it's hard to know what they're going to be like once they are aware that they are celebrity kids, and once they're like 5, 6, 7 years old. Like Luna goes to my shows and she probably thinks everybody's dad like sings in front of 5,000 people, and everybody's dad, when they go to work, they go to sing. But as sooner or later, she's going to realize that something about our life is different, and I don't really know how I'm going to deal with that yet. I guess I'm going to take it one day at a time, but I'll probably need to get some advice from other parents that are dealing with the same thing, and luckily we know a few. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah. I don't even know the answer yet.
Well, we love them dearly, dearly.
Yeah.
So cuffing season, once again, is among us.
Yes.
And you prepared us for it, though.
I have the perfect album for cuffing season.
A legendary Christmas.
A legendary Christmas.
And a
It's,
tour.
A legendary Christmas tour. I did the whole album with Raphael Sadiq, who's been responsible for some of the best music in our culture for like 30 years, honestly. Literally, like over 30 years. I grew up listening to Tony. Have loved them through the years. I've loved all of his solo work, Lucy Pearl, and he's produced some of your favorite records that you might not even know he's produced, from D'Angelo to Solange. And I just felt like I wanted to make a really classic, soulful Christmas album, and he was the only producer I thought of that had the vocabulary to do everything that I wanted to do. And I reached out to him, and I'm so happy I did, because he nailed that shit. Like, the album he really killed it. All the arrangements are exquisite, soulful. It references classic soul. It references like Christmas standards like a Nat King Cole. It references blues. It references Philly soul, Motown soul, just a range of black music that I've grown up listening to and loved. And we wanted all of that to be represented on the album, and he did it perfectly. I can't wait for y'all to hear it.
Yeah. You gotta let me get a listen. You gotta let me get a listen. So, you mentioned this letter that you wrote at 15.
Yeah, the essay.
Yeah. Sorry, the essay. Do you want to read it? Or I can read it.
Oh, you have it?
I have it.
Let me read. I'm gonna censor it a little bit, but. Okay. I said, a new generation requires a modified approach to success. I feel that I possess a concern for my people, an exemplary character, and God-given talents which will enable me to be a strong leader and an advocate for the African American people. In order to achieve these goals and support for strong men and women to be in the forefront and to lead in the struggle for success, I plan to impact society by developing my own character and being a leader in the community by example. I plan to use my social skills and my musical talents to be a positive role model. I envision a successful musical career that will allow me to obtain high visibility in the community. This in turn will put me in a position of great influence, which I will utilize in order to be an advocate for the advancement of my people. Though the African American community is currently suffering through some difficult times, powerful young men and women have the ability to control the destiny of our people and lead us into the future. I plan to be one of these future Black history makers of tomorrow.
A life of intention. A life of intention. When you read that, what do you feel?
I get the chills because it's like, I was 15 when I said that. It's crazy, and I feel so blessed and so grateful for where I am in my life to actually have said that when I was 15, and for it to have happened is pretty amazing. I feel grateful every day.
So, for all of us who will probably never win an Emmy, never win a Grammy.
Well, I think there are some Emmy winners going to be in here in this room. Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
There's some Emmy-nominated folks in here, too. What would you leave with us, even if we don't win those awards? What would you leave for these striving creatives?
Like I said before, you have to create. So if you're a writer, you need to be writing all the time, or you need to be reading people that will influence you to be the best writer you can be. Make sure you're studying the greats, seeing the great work that they do. Quincy Jones always told me, steal from the greats until you figure out how to be great yourself. That means listen, if you're a musician, listen to people that are making music that's incredible, and take cues from those people you listen to. If it feels like you're biting at the beginning, like, you'll develop your own style, but you gotta bite a little bit here and a little bit there to get your own style developed. And so do that, create, write, and then collaborate. Because there's a lot of people in this room that you can be collaborating with. There's people outside of here that you'll meet along the way that you should collaborate with. Nobody does this alone. Everybody does this with other people, bouncing ideas off of other people, being introduced to other people that can help them either on the business side or the creative side. Like, don't think you have to do this by yourself. And if you do all of those things, study the greats, write prolifically and productively, and then collaborate with awesome people, I feel like you're gonna get them Emmys, you're gonna get them Grammys, them Oscars, all of those things, they're gonna happen for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Legend,
Thank you,
so much
everybody.
for being
God
here.
bless.